Property configuration. Upon completion of this lesson, you will be able to access the property configuration screen and complete various configuration items within the property configuration screen. We're going to begin by configuring basic property information. And all of the basic property information is contained within the property configuration screen. To access the property configuration screen, click the Enterprise menu, then click Chain and Property Management, and then finally, select the Properties menu item. The Properties screen will then be displayed, showing all of the properties that you have access to. To edit the information for an individual property, click the vertical ellipsis on the right-hand side of the row for the property that you want to edit, and then click the Edit menu item that appears. The Property Configuration screen then appears for the property that you just selected to edit. This screen is divided into two separate sections, the top section being the Property Overview section with general property details such as the property name and the property code. There's also several submenus that sit below that. In the second half of the screen at the bottom is the General Information section. This contains more details about the property, such as the legal owner, the property type, the number of rooms, number of beds, etc. We'll begin by the configuration process, starting with the property controls. So click the Property Controls menu item under the Property section under the Property Overview half of the Property Configuration screen. The Property Control screen then appears, and the Property Control screen has really the most basic hotel setup information within it. So you're going to have information such as your hotel code, the date that the hotel will start doing business or start using Opera Cloud, and the end date for the hotel. And then as you can see towards the bottom, you're going to have items such as the country information, the currency format, the currency symbol, and then the date and time format and time zone for the hotel. Filling all of this out accurately is very important because everything else within the application is going to look back to this information. So make sure that everything here is filled out exactly per the hotel's specifications. Next, we'll configure the address and communication information. So click the Address and Communications menu item in the Contact section of the Property Overview portion of the screen. Then the Address and Communications window will appear. To edit the information in this screen, click the Edit button in the upper right corner of the screen. The information contained within the Address and Communications screen is going to be used in various locations throughout the application. Most notably, the address information and selected items within the communication area are also going to get pulled through into your stationery. So folios and things like that will use some of this information. And then also all of this information here, and really most all of the information that we're going to inputting through the property configuration process is going to get pulled through to the property brochure screen on the hotel-facing side of the application. It's really a one-stop shop to see a high-level overview of the entire hotel. So as we move through this configuration process, you'll see several areas that we notate are going to be pulled through to the property brochure, and this is one of them. So make sure that everything here, just like on the last screen that we configured, everything here is configured exactly per the hotel specifications because it is used in multiple locations throughout the application. And the information on the screen that we'll be filling in will be items such as the address, the city, state, postal code or the zip code depending on your region and how it's referred to, the country, and the region. One thing I do recommend doing here would be to actually go in and select your country code first, because that's going to change the options that are available on the state field and also the postal code. So if you were to fill this out from top down and fill out address, then city, then state, then postal code, and then finally country, it may actually erase some of the information just because it's resetting that field to align with the country code you selected. So definitely go in and select the country code and region first, and then go back up to the top and fill in the remainder of the fields. Then down at the bottom half here in the communications section, you'll have things such as the phone number, the fax number, email address, etc. And as you notice, none of these fields is marked as mandatory. However, I do recommend that you fill in as many of these fields as possible based on the information that you've received from the hotel. Next, we'll configure the information that's contained within the General Information section at the bottom of the property configuration screen. So click the Edit button in the upper right hand corner of this section. All of the information inside the General Information section is going to get pulled through primarily to the property brochure screen that we talked about a little bit earlier. Make sure you fill out this information exactly per the specifications of the hotel, because it is something that's going to get used a lot by sales or front desk agents to be able to either see the main details of the hotel when they're communicating with a guest or when they're trying to book a specific group. It's really one screen that lets you see a nice overview of the entire property. On this screen here, you can see we only really have one item that is required, which is the name of the hotel. However, just like with the address and communications screen, I do recommend filling in as many of these details as possible based on the information that you have available from the hotel. So that would be things such as the legal owner, the property type, and you can see the property type here is a drop-down, so you can click the search icon to the right of that to get a drop-down of available values that you can select from. You can also set the number of floors, the total rooms, and total number of beds. Please note that rooms and beds are different here, and that you may have 20 rooms, but 10 of those rooms may have 2 beds. So in reality, you have 30 beds. So make sure that you pay attention to those 2 fields when you're filling them in. You can also link to the property info URL here, and you can set the checkout and check-in times here as well. And then finally, you also have your latitude and longitude information. The final item is your base language. So this would be the default language of the application and the default language of the hotel. As with the property type field, you can see that this is a list of values that you can select from. So if you click the search icon or the magnifying glass icon to the right of the field, you'll get a pop-up with a list of values that you can select from. Before we navigate off this screen, I do want to call out that there are a ton of options here. So your accommodation details, your event spaces, property notes, etc. There's tons of options on this screen. I do recommend that when you have a chance, to poke around in the application and take a look at what items are available to configure. Some hotels may elect to configure every single item that's available here, and some may decide to follow what we're doing right now, which is a very basic, bare minimum configuration. However, one thing that you'll notice as we move forward is that everything in this section is fairly self-explanatory from a configuration perspective. It's purely data entry here, so there's not a ton of logic required to get everything set up properly. However, everything is fine-tuned down to the specific item to really help you put in a good level of detail about each item that you're configuring. Departments. Upon completion of this lesson, you will be able to access the department screen and configure departments. To access the department screen, click on the Enterprise menu at the top of the Opera Cloud Administration screen. Then click Chain and Property Management, and then finally click Departments. The department screen then appears. You can see that the screen is laid out into 2 separate sections, the top being a search section, and the bottom section showing the departments that are configured for the given search options that you have set up. To create a new department, you'll click the New button in the upper right-hand corner of the bottom half of the screen. The Create Department screen will then appear. And when you're configuring the departments, there's several options here, several fields that need to be selected, filled out, as part of that creation process. And the first one would be the location of the department. So does this department reside at the property level, or does it reside at a level above that, perhaps an ownership group or a management company level? Is it something that's going to potentially impact multiple properties that are part of a chain? Moving across to the right of the screen here, you have your code. And I recommend keeping this fairly short. This is just a 3 to 5 character code that is descriptive and will help you identify what department this is. So for instance, housekeeping could be HSK, or front desk could be FD. Something like that that's very short, very easy to identify and associate with the department. The next field is the description field. And here, this can be much longer than the code field. This is where you would actually spell out housekeeping or front desk or general manager or something like that. Again, keep it as short as possible, but use the verbiage necessary to actually fully identify the department. You'll also notice that below the description field, there's a Manage Translations link. If you click that link, you'll be taken to an additional screen where you can input translations for the description field and languages other than the default application language. The next field is your email address field. And then finally, you have a sequence field. Once you're done configuring the department, simply click the Save button. Transportation. Upon completion of this lesson, you will be able to access the transportation screen and configure transportation options. To access the transportation screen, first click the Enterprise menu at the top of the Opera Cloud Administration screen, then click Chain and Property Management, and then finally, Transportation. The transportation screen then appears. Again, this screen is laid out into 2 separate sections. You have a search box at the top of the screen and a list of transportation options at the bottom. To create a new transportation option, simply click the New button in the upper right-hand corner of the bottom half of this screen. The Create Transportation Option screen will then appear. And the transportation options that we can configure here, their primary purpose is to be shown on the property brochure screen on the front end or hotel-facing side of the application. As you can see here, there are only a couple of fields that are required to create a transportation option. So we'll start at the top here and walk through each of the fields and just give you an overview of what type of information could go inside of each one of these fields. The first field we'll cover will be the property field, which would be the property code. This should be pre-populated for you. However, if it is not, simply click the search button or the search icon to the right of the field, and then select your property code from the list of values provided. The next field is the label, and this is just a very short, potentially only 1 character label to help you identify what type of transportation option this is. So as an example, say you have a taxi service and a shuttle service. You could label the taxi service with the letter T, and you could label the shuttle service with the letter S, so that it's easy to identify in your list of transportation options. Your next field is the website field. So this is if this transportation option has a website. So for instance, if it's a third-party transportation service, you could put the website here. And that would then show up on the property brochure screen so that a front desk agent or concierge agent could easily pull that website up or provide that website to a guest so that they could research on their own. The distance field here is going to show how far does this transportation service reach out. A lot of times this is valuable for identifying how far your shuttle service would go. So if your shuttle will only take a guest up to 5 miles from the hotel, you would put a 5 in the distance field. Next you have your code, and this is just something very short and very small. We recommend keeping the number of characters as consistent as possible so that you have a really clean implementation. So for instance, if you want to standardize this on 4 characters, just make sure that each one of the codes you create is 4 characters long. Next, you have a phone number field. This would just simply be the phone number of the transportation service, primarily if it's an external service. The next field is your price range, and this is a text field that allows you to identify how much does this service typically cost. The next field would be your distance type, and this is going to tie to that distance field that we talked about a little bit earlier. And this is going to be either miles or kilometers based on whatever the unit of measure is in the country that this hotel is located. Moving on, you have a description field. And again, with other description fields, this is where you have the opportunity to go into a little bit more detail with the name. So instead of using, say, for instance, a 4-character code to identify the transportation option, here you could use a 2 or 3 word phrase to identify. And then here is your notes field. This is where you can get extremely detailed. So if you say that the shuttle service is only available between the hours of 8 a.m. and 5 p.m., you could put that into this field. And then your final field is your sequence field. As with other sequence fields, this is simply going to dictate the order in which these transportation options are presented inside a list of values. Once your transportation option is fully configured, simply click the Save button. Airports. Upon completion of this lesson, you will be able to access the airport screen and configure airports. To access the airport screen, click the Enterprise menu at the top of the Opera Cloud Administration screen. Then click Chain and Property Management, and then finally click Airports. The airport screen then appears. Again, this screen is laid out into 2 separate sections. There's a search box at the top and a list of airports at the bottom. To create a new airport, simply click the New button in the upper right-hand corner of the bottom half of this screen. The Create Airport window will then appear. The airport's information that you populate here, again, the primary use of that is going to be to display on the property brochure screen. Now we'll walk through all of the fields that you can configure within this screen. Your first field is going to be your property field. Then you have a code field. And next, we have our description field. Next, you have your website field. And this is where you would link to the website for this particular airport. Next, you have your driving directions field. And this would be where you would put together a very simple set of driving directions on how to get to this airport from the hotel or from the airport to your hotel. The next field would be your driving time, and this is a text field here. So you could say if it's 20 to 30 minutes, you would put in 20 to 30 minutes. The next field is your distance field, and this works in conjunction with the distance type field. So here you would put in whatever the numerical value is for the distance in the distance field, and then you would select your unit of measure in the distance type field. And then finally, here's your sequence field. Note that you also have a transportation code section, and this is where you could go back and link to the transportation codes that we created in a previous video. So for instance, a given airport has a shuttle service and a taxi service, then you would select in transportation code 1 your shuttle service, and transportation code 2 would be your taxi service. But if you have another airport, say it's a little bit further out, and your shuttle doesn't run there, then you would only select the taxi service. Once you have fully configured your airport, simply click the Save button. Amenities. Upon completion of this lesson, you will be able to access the amenities screen and configure amenities. To access the amenities screen, click the Enterprise menu at the top of the Opera Cloud Administration screen. Then click Chain and Property Management, and then finally click Amenities. The amenities screen then appears. Again, this screen is laid out into two separate sections. There is a search box at the top of the screen and a list of amenities at the bottom. To create a new amenity, simply click the New button in the upper right-hand corner of the bottom half of this screen. The Create Amenity screen will then appear. As with most of the other items we've configured so far, the amenities are going to be primarily used as part of the property brochure. We're going to walk through each one of the fields now and just give you an idea of what some of the potential values would be in each of these fields and how they could be used as you configure an amenity. Note that we will only quickly touch on any fields that we have discussed previously, such as the property and code fields. Your first field is your property field. Next, you have your code field. Next, you can see here that you have a description field. Again, all of these fields would be configured the same way that we've configured them in previous lessons. Your next field here is a type field, and you can see that this is a list of values. The two options that are going to be set up by default for you are general and meeting. A general amenity is something that is available and applicable to essentially all guests in the hotel, while a meeting amenity is something that is going to be tied directly to a meeting or event that would be held in your hotel. Moving on, you have your start date and your end date. The start date is the only field here that is required, and this would be the date that the amenity would be first available. I recommend just setting this to essentially the start of business date that you're going to use throughout the rest of the application, unless the amenity is not available yet. So if it's something that's going to be available in the future, then set the date to the future date accordingly. The end date does not have to be populated unless you want the amenity to be removed automatically from your list of amenities at some point in the future. Moving on, you have your hours. So essentially the hours of availability or the hours of operation. The next field is your price field. Again, this is a text field, but you can describe what the cost of that particular amenity is by using this field. And then finally, over here, you have your sequence field. And then you see that you also have a notes field. Once you have fully configured the amenity, simply click the Save button. Attractions. Upon completion of this lesson, you will be able to access the Attractions screen and configure attractions. And in this lesson, we're going to create first the attraction categories and then the attractions for the hotel. So we'll start first with the attraction categories. To access the attraction categories screen, click the Enterprise menu at the top of the Opera Cloud Administration screen. Then click Chain and Property Management, and then finally, Attraction Categories. The Attraction Category screen will then appear. Again, the screen is laid out into two separate sections. There's a search box at the top, and a list of attraction categories at the bottom. To create a new attraction category, simply click the New link at the upper right-hand corner of the bottom half of this screen. The Manage Attraction Category screen will then appear. And you can see the configuration for the attraction category is very simple and straightforward. We only have 3 fields on the page here. So first we have a code, then you have a description field, and you'll also notice below this description field that there is a Manage Translations link. If you click that link, you'll be taken to an additional screen where you can input translations for the description field in languages other than the default application language. And then your final field on this page is your sequence field. Once you're done configuring your attraction category, either click the Save and Continue button to save this attraction category and continue creating additional attraction categories, or click the Save button to save your work and be returned to the attraction category screen. Next, we'll walk through configuring attractions for the hotel. To access the attraction screen, click the Enterprise menu at the top of the Opera Cloud Administration screen. Then click Chain and Property Management. And then finally, Attractions. The attraction screen will then appear. Again, this screen is laid out into two separate sections. There is a search box at the top of the screen and a list of attractions at the bottom. To create a new attraction, simply click the new link in the upper right-hand corner of the bottom half of this screen. The Create Attraction screen will then appear. Now we're going to walk through the fields required to create the attraction. And again, if it's a field that we've touched on in a previous lesson in detail, such as a code field or a description field, we're only going to quickly mention that field. Your first field here will be the property field. Next, you have a code field. Next, here is your description field. Then you have your latitude and longitude fields. Note that these are not required. However, if you do have latitude and longitude information, you would insert it here. Next, you have the general directions field. And this would be similar to how we did in our airport setup lesson. This is your opportunity to put in driving directions or general driving directions to or from this particular attraction. Next, you have your category field, which is a list of values field. So we'll click the search button to the right of this, and then it would show up all of the categories that we created earlier in this lesson. Then you have your city and state fields. City is a text field, while state is a list of values. So you would click the search button to the right of that to get the list of values to select from. Next, you have your website field, and this is where you can put in the website for this particular attraction. The next two fields are going to be your distance and distance type field. And we covered in a previous lesson how these two fields work together. Next, you have a driving time field. And then here is your price range field. Next is your hours of operation field. And then your final field on this page would be a sequence field. Once you're done configuring your attraction, simply click the Save button. Dining and retail. Upon completion of this lesson, you will be able to access the dining and retail screen and configure dining and retail options. We'll now configure dining and retail options for the hotel. Again, the primary purpose of the dining and retail options is going to be to populate the property brochure. The dining and retail configuration menu is contained within the property configuration screen that we reviewed in a previous lesson. To access the property configuration screen for the hotel property that you would like to add dining and retail options to, first click the Enterprise menu at the top of the Opera Cloud Administration screen, then click Chain and Property Management, and then finally Properties. On the property screen that appears, click the vertical ellipsis to the right of the property you'd like to add dining and retail options to, and then click the Edit link. The property configuration screen then appears. The dining and retail link is contained within the property section in the upper half of the screen, otherwise known as the property overview section. Once we click the dining and retail link, a new window will appear containing all of the dining and retail options that have been configured for the hotel. To create a new dining and retail option, simply click the New link in the upper right-hand corner of the dining and retail window. When you're configuring the dining and retail options, you can see that there are several fields available to you on this screen. Most of these we've encountered in various other configuration lessons, but we will walk through pretty quickly here just to give you an idea of what values could potentially go in each field. Your first field is your code field. Directly below that is your description field. Next will be your type field. This is where you can go into a little bit more detail about what type of restaurant this is, what type of food do they serve, or what type of a retail establishment this is. Next, you have a category field. And this is a radio button selector here where you have the ability to select if this is a restaurant or if it is a retail outlet. Next, you have your start and end dates. Then you can see that there's an hours field and a price field. And then finally, you have your notes field. Once you have finished configuring the dining and retail option, simply click the Save button. Track it. Upon completion of this lesson, you will be able to activate the Track It functionality and configure Track It types, Track It locations, and Track It actions. Track It is a functionality in Opera that allows the property to monitor and keep track of packages, mail, and lost items. This is something that the hotel would use to keep track of when a guest receives a FedEx package or mail, or if there's a lost item that's been turned in or an item that has been reported missing. The hotel would use the Track It functionality to log these type of events as Track It tickets, and then we'd be able to track and monitor the progress of each event, including when packages and mail pieces are delivered or picked up, as well as when lost items are returned to guests. Now we're going to review the process of activating and configuring the Track It function. To begin, we'll first need to activate the Track It function via the Opera control screen. To access the Opera control screen, click the Enterprise menu at the top of the Opera Cloud Administration screen, and then click Opera Controls. The Opera control screen will then be presented. Click the General menu item under the Group section on the left-hand side of the screen, and then locate the Track It function in the list of available functions to be activated. Once you've located the Track It function, click the button to the left. You'll then be presented with a pop-up screen asking if you would like to activate the Track It functionality. Click the Activate button. To finish the activation process, we need to clear our application cache. To do so, click the menu in the upper left-hand corner of the Opera Cloud Administration screen. Then click Settings. The Settings screen will then be presented. Click the Clear Cache button in the upper right-hand corner of the Settings screen. Then, on the confirmation screen that appears, click the Clear Cache button. The application will then reload, and the Track It functionality is now active. To begin the configuration of Track It, we will first navigate to the Track It Types screen. To access the Track It Types screen, click the Enterprise menu at the top of the Opera Cloud Administration screen, then click Track It, and then finally Track It Types. The Track It Type screen will then appear. As you can see, there are two sections to this screen. There's a search box at the top of the screen, and then a list of Track It types at the bottom. To create a new Track It type, simply click the New button in the upper right-hand corner of the bottom half of this screen. The Manage Track It Type screen then appears. As you can see, there are several fields on the screen that we need to populate before creating a new Track It type. We'll walk through each of them now, taking note of the fields that are the minimum requirements to complete the configuration. The first field is the property field. As you can see, this is a required field, and the property field should be pre-populated for you. However, if you need to change the property or it is not populated, simply click the magnifying glass icon to select the correct property from the list of values provided. Next is the code field, and this field is also a required field. As with other code fields throughout the application, this is a short but descriptive field that will uniquely identify this Trackit type. It will also help you quickly locate the Trackit type in a list of Trackit types. Next is the description field, and again this field is also a required field. As with other description fields throughout the application, there should be a slightly longer and more explanatory description to help you identify what this Trackit type will be used for. Next is the website field. This is an optional field. You can use this field to identify the website associated with a particular service that is covered by this Trackit type. Next is the Trackit group field. This is an optional but highly recommended field. You can see that there are several checkboxes in this field. You can select one or more of these checkboxes as needed based on the Trackit type you are creating. Finally, here are the sequence and send message fields. Both are optional fields. However, I recommend using the sequence field when possible, as its primary purpose is to serve as a way to sort or order Trackit types in a list of Trackit types. You can also see that there is an inactive checkbox in the upper right corner of this screen that will allow you to activate or deactivate Trackit types. Once you've completed the configuration process, simply click the Save button in the lower right corner of the screen. Next, we'll configure Trackit locations. To access the Trackit locations screen, click the Enterprise menu at the top of the Opera Cloud Administration screen. Then click Trackit, and then finally, Trackit locations. The Trackit locations screen will then be presented. Again, this screen is laid out into two sections. There's a search box at the top and a list of Trackit locations at the bottom. To create a new Trackit location, click the New button in the upper right-hand corner of the bottom half of the Trackit location screen. As you can see here, the Trackit location configuration screen looks very similar to the Trackit types configuration screen. The first field is your property field. Next is your code field. Then you have a description field. The next field would be your Trackit group. And then your final field here would be your sequence field. Once you are done configuring Trackit location, simply click the Save button. Next, we'll configure the Trackit actions. To access the Trackit actions screen, click the Enterprise menu at the top of the Opera Cloud Administration screen. Then click Trackit. And then finally, Trackit actions. The Trackit actions screen then appears. You can see the screen is laid out into two sections, with a search box at the top and a list of Trackit actions at the bottom. To create a new Trackit action, click the New button in the upper right-hand corner of the bottom half of the Trackit actions screen. The Manage Trackit Actions screen then appears. And as you can see, the Trackit Actions configuration process is very similar to both the Trackit types and the Trackit locations configuration processes. The first field is the property field, and it should be pre-populated for you. The code field is your next field. Next, you have a description field. Here, there is a status field. So, is this ticket open or is it closed when this action is performed? So, for instance, if a package is delivered to a guest, if that's your particular track it action that you're configuring, then the status would be closed at that point because the hotel has now given the package to the guest. So there's no need to continue to track that particular ticket. Your next field is your track it group. And then finally, you have your sequence field. Once you're done configuring the track it actions, simply click the Save button. Image management. Upon completion of this lesson, you will be able to access various image management screens and complete the process of uploading an image. To access the various image management options that are available, first click the Enterprise menu at the top of the Opera Cloud Administration screen. Then click Image Management. You'll see several options available within the submenu here, including attractions, floor plans, item inventory, and logo. In this course, we'll simply walk through one image management option by using the logo as the example. However, all of the other submenus here, such as attractions and floor plans, all follow a very similar procedure of creating an image, uploading the image, and then saving the image. Let's click on the logo submenu item under the Image Management menu. The logo screen will then appear, and you can see that this screen is divided into two sections, with a search box at the top, and then a list of configured logos at the bottom. To create a new logo, you'll simply click the New button in the upper right-hand corner of the bottom half of the logo screen. The Create Logo screen then appears. You can see this is divided up into two sections, with your image information section at the top, and then your image source section towards the bottom of the screen. In the image information section, you've got items such as the location. So is this a global image or a property level image? The property name. The description. The logo. In this case, is it an application logo or is it for something else? Your sequence. Image name. And then the website if applicable. Towards the bottom, in the image source section, you've got the ability to either upload an image from your device, or you have the ability to upload an external image via URL. So if the hotel has an image stored on a web server somewhere, and they would like to be able to point to that image directly, you can just simply put in the image URL here. To configure the image, you'll simply complete the required data inputs at the top of the screen, and the image information sections, and then select the image that you would like to upload. Once you've completed the data entry portion, as well as the image upload or the details for the external image, simply click the Save button in the lower right-hand corner. Again, the steps and process outlined within this lesson should apply fairly consistently across all of the available image management options. So even though we only walked through creating a logo in this particular scenario, you should be able to take what you've learned here and be able to complete any of the other image management tasks.